and welcome to Dark Alignment Podcast. I'm Brittney.
And I'm Eruca Rose.
And this is Season 4, Episode 2. And we want to start off by just apologizing for the lag time between the first and second episodes. We have some good reasons for this.
We do.
So last time we were here, we covered the Menendez brothers. Go back and check out that episode if you haven't listened to it yet. That one was a lot of fun. That was really a cool deep dive that we got to do. Lots of taboo subjects that we got to touch on. And their charts were really interesting as an entire family. We really covered the entire Menendez family. So the killers and the victims, which was just pretty unique. We don't have that. We've never had that on the podcast before.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. Always love doing synastry of family members too. That's pretty neat.
I think it's really fascinating every time.
Yes. So for this episode, we are going to be doing our third cult in Dark Alignment history. This is actually one of the biggest cults that ever happened, and definitely huge events going on with it. We're going to be covering Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre today, which is just a wild story. Very triggering from start to finish, really, so buckle up for that. And then we have other cool stuff going on with the podcast other than just the podcast. We did a really cool workshop. If you haven't had a chance to get in on that yet, we still have it available.
Yes, you want to do that.
Yes. It is Psychology through the house system. So it relates it all together, and it's really, really fun. We had a great time making it. So check that out on darkalignmentpodcast.com. And while you're there, you can also find all our social media.
All of it.
All of it. So follow us, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. We're all over the place. And we try to give you guys some cool, fun content all the time. All the time, always. So, so definitely check that out. We also have merchandise available. So our logo is really amazing. Thanks to Collab Design for creating it. We have stickers with our podcast logo that say, "Let's chart this bitch" on them. So you definitely want that on your car or your favorite mug or your favorite tumbler or, on your face or wherever, no judgment where you want to put that. No judgment. And then we also have custom Dark Alignment candles.
Whoa. Can we get Dark Alignment pasties?
You could just use the stickers as pasties. I hadn't thought of this.
You said anywhere, no shame, and that's where my mind went.
I love you so much. Absolutely. We have Dark Alignment pasties available.
Whoa. Pasties, though.
Pasties. So be sure, if you wear Dark Alignment pasties, we're going to need photos. Please send them to darkalignmentpodcast@gmail.com. Or any of our social medias. We definitely want these photos. I got very distracted by the pasties. My mind is somewhere else. But we do have custom scented candles by Anastasia Blue Alchemy that smell absolutely amazing. And when you burn them, it looks like blood. The wax looks like blood.
It does.
Pretty fantastic there. So, do you have anything that you want to share going on right now? I think you're taking a little...
I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm taking a leave. This is usually prime time for me, October and early November.
Between two eclipses.
Yeah, I think the eclipse for me has something to do with it, the Scorpio eclipse. But I'm taking a break. From doing readings for everyone except Patreon members. So unless you're on my Patreon, you're not going to get anything from me until probably next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is this new patrons can join?
New patrons can still join. I left it open for now. Okay. If it gets overwhelming, then I'll probably have to cut it off. So if you do want to get in, you probably want to do that now before it gets overwhelming. Quote, overwhelming.
Got it.
I don't know what that number would be, but yeah.
Okay. All right, well, the number's not important. What is important is if you're not a member of Eruca's Patreon and you are looking to get a reading from her, which I highly suggest because she's amazing. I don't get readings from anyone else. I'm very biased. At this point in my life.
Patrons get readings once a month.
Yeah.
And, there's some other cool perks on there, and there's some cool perks in our Patreon that you definitely want to get in on.
Yes, if you are on our Patreon, you're able to watch this live right now. You don't have to wait for the full episode to come out, and you get to see all of our behind-the-scenes footage, which is pretty entertaining most of the time. Sometimes we're fumbling with cameras, sometimes we're just hanging out and talking, sometimes we're doing some pre-episode work and content and looking at the charts early and like kind of giving you some goodies that the rest of the world giving you the goodies. Really sexual tonight, I feel.
I'm happy with that.
It's Scorpio when it's Scorpio season.
Scorpio season.
That's really what's happening here. So yeah, check that out. Again, you can find all of that, all the links, all the info on darkalignmentpodcast.com. I am still available for readings. I've actually had a lot of them this week. I can tell when it's eclipse time because I get more, and I really don't advertise y'all like ever.
Yeah, you don't.
I just kind of organically get readings, and right now has been like I'm still doing everything while I have the energy, because if you follow us on social media, you have already heard that I am pregnant. I'm expecting my first child, a baby girl. This is our second podcast baby, and a girl. You had a girl,
and also be spring girls.
Yes, weeks apart as far as birth date, like due date.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, and then also if we count Evelyn, my dog, she would be the third girl podcast baby because.
Yeah, the last time we had an announcement like this for you was for Evelyn, the dog.
It was. So this is my first actual child. Pregnancy has been really intense, so that is part of our lag as well, as I've been dealing with a lot of
eclipses and pregnancy,
and then you were
sickness, and so really a lot this year.
But we appreciate you guys, still supporting us, still being here, still showing up for us. We're going to give you a great episode tonight. We're going to have
We're very excited. We've been waiting to do this one.
I've wanted to do this episode for years, and actually I believe it was 2 years ago for Halloween. I was Jim Jones, and I posted it on the podcast. So I have always been very fascinated by this cult. Cults in general have always piqued my interest, but this one, and if you've ever heard of Jonestown, which most of you have, I assume, because it was just so huge, you know where the interest comes from. So we'll go ahead and just get into it. So sources for this podcast, I kept them short, even though I've done so much. This is one of those that I have indulged in information about it for so long. It's really hard to nail it down. But as far as specifics for this episode that I intentionally consumed as a source, Wikipedia, which I love Wikipedia. I am due for my annual donation. I got the email about it, so stay on me, harass me. I have to do my annual donation. So yeah, if you use this platform, please also donate. I can't do it all on my own. It's not. I can't have Wikipedia.
You can't fund the entire site of Wikipedia.
Right. I can't have this all on my shoulders, guys. So if you use Wikipedia, please donate. Also, last podcast on the left has a 5-part series on Jonestown. It is absolutely fucking amazing. Those guys do such a great job. I love them. I love their podcast. And that 5-part series, so it's over 10 hours of Jonestown material that and this was not the first time I listened to it. This is maybe the third time that I've listened to the 5-part series.
She also took extra time, I remember.
Absolutely.
You wanted for this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of those that they just do such a great job, and they include actual excerpts of Jim Jones speaking. So hearing the actual audio clips all the way through his entire career, which this cult lasted about 27 years, I believe.
And from what I can tell, it seems like he did kind of change over time.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to look at the evolution of Jim Jones throughout this, which is going to be...
Yes! I've been watching so much drag.
Oh my gosh!
Slay. I'm just going to start.
I do that when I watch a lot of Drag Race, too. I start, suddenly
This is not the podcast for that, though.
Yes, it
is. Is it? We're going to be talking about everyone getting killed, and I'm going to be slay.
That they were slain.
They ate.
Yeah. That's exactly, yes. Read them to filth, girl. So another source that I consumed that was really good was Hulu has a documentary called Truth and Lies, Jonestown, Paradise Lost, and that one was really interesting too. Highly recommend that. It's a short one. It's quick. It's more of like a whole overview. But the other sources that I went with are more of a deep dive. So
perfect.
now we're going to get into the overview. What was Jonestown? What are we here to talk about? So this cult was known as the People's Temple under the leadership of a man who eventually became kind of a maniac, Jim Jones, and this all began in the late 1970s. So if you have ever heard the phrase, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid," that is because of this story, which is fascinating because they weren't even drinking Kool-Aid, and I'll get into that later. But this was the largest mass suicide. It's really more of a mass murder, but the largest mass suicide in history. And most everyone died by cyanide poisoning. So really, really horrific. I've got I have a few different numbers for the total dead, and it's like, depending on the source, there's a different number, but it's all really close. One source said 913, another said 918. So we're talking like small discrepancies, but nearly 1,000 people died this day. And most of the victims, like a good portion of them, around 270 is the number, were children. So
that's a lot more than I expected. And
they did not ingest this poison voluntarily. So it's absolutely gruesome. Like, it's really horrific. So trigger warning once again. And then Jim Jones himself did not die by cyanide poisoning. We're going to talk in detail. And it was grape Flavor Aid laced with cyanide. That's what it actually was. But his death was not like everyone else's, and we'll get into that later and discuss all the aspects of the tragedy. So buckle up for this madness. We're gonna start with young Jimmy. We're gonna walk through his life, like I said, and see the evolution of how he changed over time. So he was born James Warren Jones. He was born on May 13th, 1931 in Crete, Indiana. They actually did call him Jimmy as a kid. I didn't know that when I titled the section Young Jimmy. So that was kind of like, I put that in as an afterthought because I was like, I was onto something there.
I figured you were just being funny.
I skimmed through. I was being funny. I was hilarious. And then I found out that it was like a legit thing. And I was like, it's not as funny. But his mom called him Jimba, which is weird. And like the guys on Less Podcast on the left had fun with this, and they were like, it sounds like Simba, like, you know, like the whole
Jimba Joe, Jimba G.
It's just kind of weird. But
I'm gonna have fun with that.
Yes, we can call him that. So as you can imagine, for someone who turned what?
Jimbaroo.
We're here for the Jimboree. Oh,
I can't remember what they actually called it now.
Yes,
it's Jimboree.
This is the Jimboree. But as you can imagine, somebody who grew up to be this type of person who would lead nearly 1,000 people to their death, he didn't have the best childhood. So this is, again, we see this on just about every episode of this podcast. Very rarely do we talk about somebody who had a pretty good upbringing. We have had a couple of those, but they're few and far between. We have Jodi Arias, for example, pretty decent childhood, nothing too crazy.
But it's also sometimes we don't know. Like, we don't know a lot about their childhood.
Right. But even by their own account, nothing too horrendous happened. But Jim Jones is interesting. So his father actually came from a rich family, but he grew up very poor. And his parents were very absent, very neglectful. So his dad was a disabled World War I veteran who had a lot of breathing problems as a result of his time in the service. So because of this, he was disabled. And his mother was said to have, quote, no natural maternal instincts. So that's rough. There was
Cold
also...
mom.
Yeah.
Cold, uncaring mom.
Yes, and there was a significant age difference between his parents, which was a lot more common back then than it is now, but mom was said to be kind of a gold digger, so she knew he was from this wealthy family, so that was like part of the attraction for her, and multiple accounts reveal that the pregnancy was unplanned and unwanted, so she was bitter about being forced into the role of a mother. Like, that wasn't something that she wanted for her life or saw for her life. She was also very unhappy with the financial situation because she was forced to become the breadwinner of the family. So even though there was this family money and this inheritance, her husband couldn't work. He was disabled. So she was forced to get a job. She actually got a job working in a glass factory, which sounds terrible. So yeah, the family was living in poverty. And Jim, being unsupervised a lot of the time, I mean, he spent most of his young life wandering the streets, kind of alone, or found himself in the care of random neighbors. So that's kind of interesting. They were willing to give him food and clothes, which is actually pretty nice that neighbors saw this lone kid and they were like, well, he needs help and we're going to help him. I'm glad that somebody stepped in. But one of the neighbors started taking him to her church, and it was an evangelist church at a very young age. And this is what kind of sparked his obsession. He had a true obsession with church and preachers and pastors and kind of the whole thing. But another thing that we talk about on this podcast as far as risk factors go is neglect. Very, very strong risk for antisocial behavior, because a neglected child is going to learn that they can't really trust the world around them from an early age. We talk about this a lot in our workshop, actually. When we're talking about the house system and those like foundational parts of life. Like if you're not able to establish trust at a young age, you learn the opposite. You learn mistrust. You learn to be weary of the world and that it's not going to take care of you. So the response to a child is really, really important. They need that response from their caretakers, and when they don't get it, it very much puts them more at risk, especially if there aren't any resiliency factors in the mix. So
I think some of that we talked about in the second house.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And he has Lilith in the second house.
Interesting.
So he felt like he had to like empower himself in that way. Like he had to find some way to like rise above the situation he was in, and it's in Pisces, so it is kind of like this like God, like spiritual connection, this like higher power thing.
Wow, that's where he found that solace.
It sounds like that's what he did when he was younger, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, when there's neglect involved, there's a lack of social interaction. Yeah. And that also sets a child up to have more difficulty and be more inclined to have antisocial behaviors come out as a result. So it's one of those things where, like, because he didn't have a lot of social interaction, he had trouble making friends, and peer acceptance is super, super important. So neighbors said from a young age, Jim was obsessed with a couple of things. Like I said, religion, but he was also obsessed with death. So that's not a thing that makes you, like, super popular. You're gonna love this. This feels very like Scorpio, so I'm dying to know where Scorpio, like what his Scorpio placements are, because he hosted funerals at recess. And this is wild, but he would take other kids to the local coffin factory at night. Oh my God. So they left everything unlocked back in the day. They didn't lock buildings and businesses. They didn't think about it. They didn't have to. So him and a bunch of school kids, somehow he got them to go with him. And they'd go into this coffin factory, and he would tell them all to climb inside so they would know what it was like to be dead. Which is, which other kids, like, thought that was weird and, like, didn't go back with him, multiple times. Also, he had really inappropriate responses to conversation. So if somebody was, like, to say hello to him, his response would be, like if you said good morning, he'd be like, hello, bitch, or hey, you dirty bastard. So
this is a Mars and Leo in 8th house.
Oh, okay. I've got an 8th house Mars.
It's kind of like that. Like, you're kind of motivated in that, like, dark way, in that, like, death way. Yeah. And it's in Leo, so he's expressing it as a child, in a childlike, fun way. That's what this is.
That's very fun.
The Mercury thing kind of got me thinking about what he said, stuff he says.
I got a lot of good quotes from him as we go too.
But he has a real interesting Uranus placement, so I think he likes the shock value of things. Yeah. And then his Mercury just kind of like makes it flow, but it feels grounded. Wow. That's what I'm getting so far. Wow. Based on what you're saying.
This is great. Okay.
And the chart.
Fascinating. So he's got all these risk factors piling up too, because, peer acceptance not going so well, not really good at the social interaction, parents are very neglectful, growing up in poverty, Again, all risk factors. Another thing that made him kind of like awkward was that he always wore his Sunday best to school. So he was dressed way up, like way up.
Capricorn rising.
Oh, this is great.
I like just throwing it at the...
I love that you're doing that. Like it's.
He has a Tholis as like the first thing in his Capricorn rising with Saturn there and Vesta. He's devoted and very strict. Very, yeah, it's extreme.
Yes, very extreme. It's very theatrical too, which is that like Leo energy.
That Mars.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
This is a very crazy combo of placement so far.
He's a really interesting character to kind of look at from how he started out into how he ended up, which
like so rigid, but also
real expressive about that. And he continues to get more expressive. I mean, you know, when you start a cult, you tend to really
you gotta be
your stuff. So another big change that happened for him is his parents got a divorce. So this meant Jim had to move. He moved to Richmond, Indiana, and that's where he graduated high school. He was actually a pretty good student, so that's a resiliency factor. That's something that's kind of working in his favor, that he, you know, had good basic intelligence going on. So he was not an unintelligent person. And I feel like anyone who does lead a cult to this degree is pretty intelligent to figure out the formula to make that happen. And his organizational skills were impeccable.
Yeah, that's a lot of
organizing. Rising, now that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, he really built an establishment. That's what he's out here to do. It's like, it's not enough for him to rise above his own situation. He has to create an empire of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the entire movement of
JONESTOWN. He has to get everybody else to do it. Even just hosting funerals at recess. Like, he couldn't just keep it to himself. He had to, like, come on, guys, let's go.
Rally the troops.
Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, back to more of, like, the Capricorn rising is how rigid. His views were very rigid, especially politically. And that's what's, I think, so fascinating about JONESTOWN is that it was never a religious cult. And you normally see a religious cult happening where there's some form of God. Yeah. His cult was entirely political. It was about the big socialist movement. So his views were very, very radical.
Some were Capricorn.
Yes.
Yeah, then most of the other ones were like, you know, a lot more like Aquarius, Pisces.
Yep.
Maybe
and they had those placements in common.
Yeah, but no, his is more like, he has a lot of earth. Like, he shows up in a more like...
very grounded way. Yeah. Also, let's talk about his role models growing up. One of his biggest role models was Hitler, but not for political reasons. He actually just liked the way that Hitler spoke and commanded attention. It was like he took notes.
I gotta look at Hitler's chart now.
Okay, do it. But this is like, you know, a big red flag for anybody who's looking up to Hitler. That's not great. But
no.
But he kind of like mixed this with other figures that he saw growing up that commanded a room. So, like I said, when he was younger, that neighbor took him to a Pentecostal church. He always wanted to be a preacher, and this was a long-standing interest. Even though he wasn't super religious, he just liked the way people listened to everything the preacher had to say.
Yeah, he wants to be in charge. He wants the control, the power.
So he started going to a bunch of different churches. He started
like a boss, like a Capricorn rising.
Yes. He started basically studying this. So he went to a bunch of different churches, just being obsessed with religion, just paying attention to how the crowd responded to the pastor, the preacher, whoever. So it was kind of like the perfect storm of everything, the way this all manifested. And then, you know, he did have love in his life. We're gonna talk a little bit about that. So not long after high school, Jim got a job working at a hospital, and that is where he met his future wife, Marceline, who he married in 1949. Okay. He was only 18 when he got married, so pretty young. He's still a very young Jimmy going on. She came from a political family and was a devout Methodist. Because of her family's reputation, I think that's what made her such an attractive partner for Jim Jones with what he was passionate about and trying to do. I think he saw her as the perfect counterpart for his big plan of how he was going to... It
fit into what he wanted.
It made him more reputable by just being associated with her and her powerful family. Like, that's the reputation that he wanted, making him a somebody through her. So, and she was drawn to his charisma and his compassion for the patients at the hospital. But it really feels like these were more of just manipulation tactics that he was using.
He wanted. It kind of fits because, you know, he's got North Node in Aries, Uranus in Aries, Moon in Aries, Murder Moon, Venus in Aries, and Juno in Aries. So he's got the marriage and the heart space like right on where his like life path is, his North Node. So it kind of makes it tied into his motivation for what he wants.
Yes.
Like it's all connected into what his goals for his life. And he's a Capricorn rising. He's very goal oriented already.
Yes.
So his goals are to, you know, do this Aries energy thing. It's third house, which is like very like small community, like, but it's kind of a big one by the end of it. But
it starts.
He wants to create a community, an empire out of a community.
Wow.
So I see the marriage playing into it was my point because it's so close to the North Node.
That makes all the sense because it was like he chose her,
and he waited till kind of later on. It sounds like he didn't get married really young.
Well, he got married at 18.
Oh, never mind.
So he was pretty young. He already knew what he wanted to do, though. That's what's so interesting is that he already had. It's almost like he was a miniature adult from very early childhood. Like it doesn't feel like Jim Jones was ever really a child. Like he wasn't doing really child things. He was always interested in kind of emulating adults around him and adulthood and commanding this attention and like having people responding to him and what he had to say. He wanted people to listen to him.
Right.
He felt like he had a lot of important messages and views and wanted people to kind of go along with him. So that's really interesting that it was always like that. And so he like learned to hone these skills. I think from watching all these. He
studied it.
He did. He studied it. It's like he took notes. He honed his skills. He knew what he was good at. And he knew what worked and didn't work with people. So he continued to follow his preacher dreams. He continued a formal education at Butler University. He became a member of the Communist Party and began his ministry. So he was a socialist and not a Christian. Mm-hmm. Again, more political interest.
Yeah. So his ninth house, which would be like that college-y studying thing, is where his south node is. So that's like earlier life. And Sarah's there. And then Libra, which is more like judicial, political, like mediation type stuff.
It's interesting because he was so a lot of what he was doing with this socialist movement was based in equality, which is very Libra. Mm-hmm. Specifically racial equality.
Started out more on the equality side, ended up on the Aries death murder side.
Right. Yeah. But equality is really what got him all the attention and like got him started. So the next section is starting Occult 101. So you want to just kind of speak to anything else that jumped out in his childhood that we haven't already like hit on?
I looked at Hitler's chart.
Oh yes, let's do a comparison. This is great.
Okay, so
a bonus chart.
Bonus chart. I mean, I wasn't planning on this, and it's not in my program, so it's a little bit like. It's fine. It's just annoying to me. So Hitler was also a Taurus.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So he already likes him because they're the same sign. Because Jim Jones is a Taurus with an Aries moon and a Capricorn rising. Hitler is a Taurus with a Libra rising and a Capricorn moon. So they've got the Capricorn Taurus stuff going. And Hitler also has Jupiter conjunct his moon in Capricorn. So it makes it like extra, you know? And I see he's got Saturn in his 10th house in Leo. So that's a lot of expression of the Saturnian structure and rules and like really expressing all the things that he wants to be the groundwork, you know, the foundation for what he's building. I think that I see why that would appeal.
Yeah, it makes sense why he was drawn to someone like Hitler. It's really fascinating.
Jim Jones has his Mercury in Taurus, on the early part Taurus, and Hitler has his at the end of Aries, so they're on the same cusp.
Wow.
So I think he probably appreciated how similar Hitler's speech was, but also how it's a little more like aggressive and shorter, blunt.
Yeah.
You know?
And the way the crowds responded to Hitler. That was the other thing that Jim Jones was really captivated by, was the response. And that's what he was trying to emulate. Like, okay, I want to do this so I get this reaction. And he really started to understand how to get the reactions he wanted out of people. And a lot of that, I feel, did come from his work in the hospital, where he, like, a lot of his followers were the elderly, and he was working with the elderly and making them feel cared for, and being this caretaker role, and being so gentle and compassionate. Like, Marceline loved his compassion that she felt like he had for these people. And it seemed like he had that for his followers. And I think he might have early on
is what it kind of sounds like.
And we'll get into all that.
At least he came off caring at the beginning, is what it sounded like to me.
He was actually doing things for these people that nobody else was doing, like actually helping them.
Yeah.
And literally, this was a community that was entirely ignored. So for him to come in as a white man and help this underprivileged community, I mean, like, he was kind of ahead of his time when he came onto the scene. It's crazy how it ended so badly, but it started as this, what seemed like a really positive thing. It's fascinating. Fascinating story.
If you are in Northwest Arkansas and looking for affordably priced photography and videography services, then you should definitely reach out to Nice NWA.
Yes, you should.
With photo sessions starting at $100, now is a great time to update your company's headshots, get graduation photos, new family pictures, and more. Looking for video work instead?
Yes, videos start at just $300 and are a great way to boost your marketing engagement online with current customers and potential new customers. It's also a great way to create highlight reels of your next event, or just to tell your story in an exciting and creative way. NICE is not just locally owned and operated, but is also a certified minority and veteran-owned business that started right here in Northwest Arkansas in 2017.
So, go check them out on Facebook or on Instagram at Nice NWA, or by visiting their website at nicenwa.com.
Is there anything else you want to touch on his childhood before we looking into starting a cult 101?
Yes. So, early life, I usually look at, like, the beginning houses.
I like this motion.
So watching so much drag, I can't.
I know, you're so fabulous.
I've been binging lately.
You're so fabulous.
I'm fabulous all of a sudden. My look is extremely unfabulous, but I'm feeling fabulous.
Your look is fishy, and I approve.
Oh my god! All right,
so
all right.
Fish. Okay.
I've gotta focus.
Too much fun.
His early life, the first house, he does have Saturn there. That can be a pretty cold or maybe feeling uncaring kind of upbringing, but it isn't Capricorn, it's ruler, so it's kind of like, maybe he vibes with that a little bit.
He's into it.
I feel like maybe that doesn't feel so heartbreaking to him. I'm sure it affects him, but it seems like maybe not as much as it might if you were like, I don't know if it was in Cancer or like in Pisces or something. I don't think he's having like huge emotional meltdowns about it, I guess. That's maybe what I'm trying to say. This can show like maybe a lot of extra stress or anxiety on how he comes off to people, on like his direct appearance, his identity. He might have had a hard time kind of nailing down who he feels like he really is, how he shows up in the world. But then the second house comes up pretty quick with that Lilith placement, so all of a sudden he's like, no, I have this power, this emotional power. It's almost like he's like taking advantage of other people's empathy.
Yes.
Like to level up himself is what it feels like on the chart. It makes a sextile up to that Saturn and a sextile down to his sun. But anyway, then the third house, moon, a bunch here. So I feel like this is family chaos and family stress. We got Uranus and the moon and the North Node and Venus. And it just seems like a lot of Aries, fast fire energy, but like it's kind of propelling him forward, but also it feels like sporadic a little bit. It's definitely tied to the mom. With the moon stuff, with the moon being here. I think this is a lot of like whatever trauma his mom whatever environment she provided for him because of her situation is what this feels like. And I think that a lot of his stuff feels like it's related to this third house.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There's a lack of supervision. He's kind of bouncing around. He's like got neighbors taking care of him. Like the community is kind of taking care of him. Like his small communities. It's interesting. It's like third house stuff, and it's like that's where his caretaking is coming from. It's just this outside.
He's just kind of bouncing around the whole
this
little
small community.
neighborhood.
They're gonna raise me. They're gonna take care of me. Like
and he's got to be kind of independent with that Saturn in the first house. Like, he's taking care of himself. He's doing it.
I don't think he, like, went to anybody for this care. I think they just took it upon themselves to help this wandering child. Like, I really feel like it was, you know, a compassion thing that maybe he was like, I could do that. Like, it almost was like he modeled that behavior, and, like, he wanted to take in the people of the world that were kind of wandering. And
I mean, with everything... When you got Pholus as your first placement on your chart, everything in your life is going to be kind of extreme.
Yeah.
And then the fourth house, he's got Juno and Mercury and Chiron conjunct his sun in Taurus. So Chiron conjunct the sun does kind of give you this, like, trauma healer identity.
Yeah.
Like, your character as yourself is, like, oh, I went through this horrible thing, and now I'm here to help everyone else.
I was this lost child, and now I'm going to heal the lost children of the world. Like it
can be good. It can be bad. And this is in the fourth house. It has a lot to do with the home and feeling secure, feeling cared for, maternal stuff. It's in Taurus. It's like all of this, like, comfy, cozy, security feeling. And he's able to speak on that. You got Mercury there. He probably sounds like pretty, like, self-assured when he talks, I would imagine, with all the earth, but also really fired up because of the fire placements, like, really, I don't know about aggressive, what's a better word, but, like, there's some power.
Assertive?
Yeah, assertive, real assertive, I could see him coming off, like, kind of exciting and assertive, grounded.
Even passionate. Very passionate about what he has to say. And he felt like he had a lot to say, which is why he wanted to, like, command the attention of the room. Like, what I have to say is so important. Like, people need to hear it. How can I make sure to emulate other people that, like, people listen to? Like, I want to be the person that people listen to. That really was, like, a goal of his. So, and
he'll be, you know, he'll really find more opportunities and stuff through coming off caring, because he's got Jupiter conjunct Pluto in Cancer, and it's in the 7th house, so it'll tie into relationships too. That'll help him. Yeah. Help him carry forward with his goals.
And it really does.
Yeah.
So, any other?
That's good. I want to go.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I want to hear more.
Okay, so more things. Starting Occult 101. So we're gonna kind of go back to Jim. He's a young adult. This is kind of where we're at. So he was looking for a place in the world where he could not only be heard, but he wanted to have power. We've talked a lot about power. We've talked a lot about control so far. These are things that he was seeking. He had all this charisma. He had all this presence. He was described as having a fire, which makes all the sense with all the fire in his chart. So we've already been talking about
this. He's got a fire in his soul.
He was extremely outspoken about things like race and class. He was attracting this disenfranchised group of people, preaching about social justice, equality. These things are important to him. So he sort of learned this in childhood when kids his age weren't interested in playing with him. So when those kids that he took to the funeral play funeral with him thought he was weird, he would then appeal to younger kids instead and earn their attention and their loyalty. So he carries this whole concept with him throughout life. Like, if I can't get this group of people to listen to me, I can get this other group. So
yeah, that doesn't deter him. It doesn't like make him.
It makes him better at
think
what
twice.
He does. It
just makes him do it again.
It helps him hone his skill and, like, choose a different group of people to appeal to. So that was part of, like, this disenfranchised group of people. Like, well, they'll listen to me because I'm saying what they want to hear. I'm preaching a message that's going to mean a lot to them. So
I don't find the right audience.
Yeah, he found his audience.
He's very self-assured. Like, if he had doubt, if he wasn't all these earth placements, you know?
Right.
He'd be like, oh, maybe I need to rethink, that? No.
Yep.
Which is also what other Mr. Colty had, like, some Taurus placements.
Right. Charles Manson.
Yeah.
Yep.
Charlie Manny
Charlie Manny
had
over there.
had some self-assuredness with what he was talking about too. I think he was Taurus rising.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we already talked about him being passionate. He was a very passionate speaker, so people wanted to listen to him. He talked about creating this integrated society. It sounds very idyllic, especially at this time when there was a lot of racial tension. People were just flocking to him. He went into all black neighborhoods to preach this message. He was going to places that nobody else was going. And he was making an effort and doing all of this. And nobody was doing this in the 1950s. Like, this is a really tough time. And because of all of this, and because of his willingness to go and appeal to these people, he was able to start his own church. And his first church that he started was called Community Unity. I know. I love that your response was
Remember
laughing.
Y'all-idarity?
I
sounds
tried,
like that.
I tried to forget that. Yeah. I hate it so much.
There's like, it's just a funny name for a group that genuinely helps people on Facebook, but it's just the name is so funny.
Instead of solidarity, they called it y'all-idarity.
Because it's Southern.
Because we're Southern, it's embarrassing. So,
it sounds like that. Community unity.
It does sound like that. And then this church was located in the inner city. So this was accessible to the people that he's trying to reach, right in their backyard. Very much where he wanted to be. So his congregation was almost 100% African American. And historically, this was a time where, like I said, racial tension, the ideology of Jim Jones was refreshing. It was different. He was sort of ahead of his time. Once again, the message that he gave people was hope. His followers genuinely wanted to be part of something good in the world. That was a big common thing that his followers always had about them, is that they wanted to be part of what they thought was this great thing that he was creating and doing. So it's ironic, but Jim Jones was an atheist, actually. So that's why his mission was so much more political than it was religious. He didn't announce this to his followers. Like, they didn't know that he was an atheist. He wasn't, like, proudly saying things like that. But just his message never really focused on anything religious-based, the Bible, anything like that. It was always about this equality and integration and being, we're all one kind of a message. So at this point, he is really helping people, though, at this point in time. Like, he's doing good things. He was helping people, like, who, you know, needed resources. He was connecting them to the right resources. He was helping people get what they needed, like get their electric bills taken care of, get power on in their house. Like, he was actually making real change in these people's daily lives, and people were seeing that. So that made them loyal to him. That made them look up to him. That helped them believe in him and tell more people about it, of course. So this is a growing group. Shit didn't start really getting weird until he started using, like, a con in it all. He did start intentionally conning his followers. So he was really big into faith healing because he would go to revivals and stuff when he was a kid. So that's like the laying of hands and like the working miracles. And Jim loved how theatrical it was and how big and grandiose this was. And so he kind of took notes on how amazed the crowd was. And again, how the crowd responded to what they were seeing. So like these big, like, miracles, you know.
That's what was important to him.
That was important, was the crowd response. It's just like, if you're a musician and you're on stage in a band, like, you're going to play the hits. You're going to, like, what makes the audience go wild. You know what they like, and he knew what his audience wanted to see and what they liked and what could get the biggest response. So while he was doing good for people, he still cared a lot more about the crowd response. Like, that was his whole motivation. So his followers at that point, when he's performing these cons or miracles, like, it looked like a miracle, but it was all a setup. They were convinced that he had this godlike power, even though he never talked about God and never talked about religion. Like, they were kind of just convinced.
He just kind of became like that.
Yes. Yeah. He set himself up to be that. So he was staging these healings. There's some very famous footage. You can find it online. It's fascinating. There's a wheelchair-bound woman who is there, and he calls her out of the crowd, and he's like, you know, doing his whole thing and working his miracle, and he tells her to get up and walk, and suddenly she's get up and she's moving, and next thing you know, she's running across the room. And the crowd goes absolutely wild. So it wasn't real, but it was real to the people in his congregation. It was real to the people who were there witnessing it. Like, we just saw a miracle before our very eyes, you know? So because of this, his group continued to grow. Like I said, he was gaining popularity, and eventually they outgrew their space. So they had to move into a new one. So Jim found a new venue. It was formerly a Jewish temple, and this is where the word temple in People's Temple came from. So on the building, the word temple was there, and that sparked the name for the new group in his mind. So People's Temple. His followers referred to him as Father. They viewed him as the most kind. Oh, you're watching it.
Yeah, I pulled it.
Oh, you're watching it. Yeah, you can find this very easily. But they viewed him as the most kind and generous person that they had ever met.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, these people look, not entranced, like in love with him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were. His followers were absolutely in love. They called him Father, or eventually they called him Daddy.
These people are in full belief. Daddy?
They called him Daddy. They did. They called him Daddy, which is kind of intense.
Daddy Jones. Daddy Jimbaroo.
Daddy Jimbaroo. And once he had all this power, he found different ways to use it. So he worked to get this, like, establish this power that he had, and then use it. So this cult, again, had been around for more than 20 years. So this was a slow burn. This was a slow build. This was not something that blew up in 3 years and fizzled out. This was, he really, like, very Capricorn rising, took the time to, like, build this empire into what it became.
He didn't rush. He just did the work. He
was also a really great businessman. More Capricorn energy.
I'm sure.
He started a nursing home that was like a facility through the People's Temple, because the elderly were a big part of his following. So this gave his followers jobs. It gained their trust. It was a way to turn a profit as well.
Because you don't create all of this with no money.
But how he would do this is he would actually absorb their homes. Yeah. And then move them into the nursing home. So, like, he was obtaining property through this and more financial gain. So it's, again, the word fascinating. It's just, like, keeps coming to me. Like, it's such a fascinating thing. And another wild fact, this is so good. You're going to die. You're going to die. Are you ready for another one of his side hustles? Yeah. He sold spider monkeys door to door. I am not even kidding. He was a door-to-door spider monkey salesman on top of all... No, I can't. So that's kind of the build-up of the cults. The next section
Don't let your kids sell spider monkeys.
Don't let your kids sell or buy spider monkeys from door-to-door salesmen. Don't let them become one or purchase one. I feel like it's not to be trusted.
Oh my god.
So the next section is really where things start to go dark, because right now we were talking about happy times in Jonestown, and there were some really good times. That's why people followed him so devoutly and were so, like you said, you could see they are just in love with
this guy.
Yeah, they were. So...
And knowing what happened now, watching these videos, I really think all of you guys should.
Yeah.
Maybe
we'll post the link in our...
Yeah. Maybe we'll post some of these videos somewhere.
I think we should. We should put them somewhere, but it's really fascinating to...
Yeah, she's running.
Yeah, she's
not even walking. She's running.
She starts out walking and hobbling, and then he tells her to run. He tells her to. Yeah. Oh, this footage. This was before the sunglasses. This is the early days of Jim Jones before he wore the sunglasses, which the reason he wore sunglasses later on, I'll just go ahead and spoiler alert, is because he was doing a lot of drugs. And he was actually supposedly amphetamines, which, like, his hero Hitler. But his eyes were so red that, like, he didn't want anybody to see his eyes.
Better just wear sunglasses all the time.
Right, so he wore sunglasses 24/7.
All of the time. Yeah, that seems less suspicious.
Yes.
So, man. Yeah, I almost thought you were gonna say because maybe he liked that power dynamic, like
No.
they can't see my eyes thing.
Now I think that would have worked in his favor to look people in the eyes.
Yeah,
but,
true, because he did this caring thing.
But when your eyes are all fucked up,
this empathy thing, but not real empathy.
When your eyes are all red and terrible, nobody's gonna really want to look at them. So the cult starts to go very dark. Of course, there's a turning point. We always see this. The fun times, the happy times where everybody's getting in there and then something really dark and twisted happens. Well, obviously that happened here, but over time he started to separate the families in the cult and reestablish them by appointing new partners for everyone. So kind of reassigning how the families go. If he thought someone was attractive, male or female,
he got them.
He would come on to them.
Yeah.
Yes, he used sex as another form of power and dominance over everyone, regardless of gender.
He's using that Mars placement.
Yep. And gender wasn't really a thing for him. He claimed he didn't like it when he had to have same-sex interactions, but that it was part of his calling. He's not enjoying it or anything.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
He also conducted public beatings.
What?
Of the members of the congregation, which is terrifying. It's
horrible.
awful. So he would degrade them
This is
first.
all Mars crap. This is all his Mars doing stuff. Yeah.
He would first degrade them in front of everybody else. So it was the humiliation and the shame. Really, really terrible. And then he would beat them sometimes with chains. And they would be bloody. Really.
Yeah, he's going to put on a full show.
And I've heard the audio recordings of this. And it's so disturbing.
Screams.
Because he's all you really hear is him laughing.
What?
And it's this high-pitched, chipmunk-sounding, demonic fucking laugh. It's so horrible to listen to, but I have listened to it. He was very physically, verbally, and spiritually abusive to these people. So, yeah. The audio files are intense. If you feel inclined to listen to them and you want to hear this laugh, go for it, but you've been warned. It's pretty rough. So, but this whole thing just made his followers want to please him even more.
But they were already so committed.
Right.
Yeah.
He had full control over everyone in Jonestown. Things continued to escalate. He enjoyed playing these sadistic games with his closest followers, or the inner circle. The inner circle was the leadership. And there were 13 people in the leadership group. So this is a very small circle when you consider how large this group became. So, and a lot of the survivors have talked about this and what it was like to be in that inner circle, and gave firsthand accounts of this. So one night he gave his inner circle glasses of wine. And no one drank alcohol since they joined the People's Temple. So it was oh, okay. They were we're drinking wine, all right. They were kind of
oh, is this a test?
Of course it was. Of course it was a fucking test. So, they were excited. They were okay, I'd love to have a drink. A few minutes after everyone had communion, Jim tells them that they've all been poisoned and had 1 hour to live. Truthfully, that had not happened. They were not poisoned. It was fine. He did this just to watch how they reacted. He groomed these people to be ready for what happened later. And you see, he does this multiple times, but a few minutes into this.
He's this thing of death. Yeah.
Yes, and a few minutes into it, he laughed and told them they all passed the test. So he did this stuff to them a lot. It's the Hulu documentary is where you can see these interviews if you'd like to check that out. But they truly worshipped him. They idolized him. They loved him. They were so obedient. And then the more things escalated, the more paranoid that Jim Jones got about everything going on with
Well, it sounds like maybe the drug use was also going up too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he got really paranoid when people would leave the group.
The drug use and the Lilith and Pisces.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That
Go
makes
ahead.
Sense. So people leaving the group, he took that as a personal attack. He was extremely offended. He couldn't just even though when the group got really big, he couldn't handle one person leaving. That was just so insulting to him. So he called those people traitors, of course. And it was like a big deal. Like everybody was known to look at those people as traitors. Like, how dare they leave this amazing group? Like, what are they thinking? Like, so over the next, little while, he decides he's going to move his cult that started in Indiana. They had migrated to San Francisco. He's now going to take them out of the country to Guyana. And this is in South America. It's on the North Atlantic coast. It's basically a dense rainforest. It's not an inhabitable space, really. It's not,
But they're surviving there. They're like working to survive. Yeah.
So he's basically going to move people into the jungle and further isolate them. So the way he did this was so interesting because he didn't want to catch a lot of attention for what he was doing. He wanted to kind of make it strategic, very organized again. So small groups of the members would start to get passports and fly out to the new location. So he kept it all under the radar this way, kept it all under control. He was so in control of how this all went. And once they were on the island, he made them all wake up every day at 5:30 a.m. to work the crop fields. So he basically had like slave labor going on. He had his sermons. This is crazy. Sermons were playing over an intercom system 24/7. So he's always in their ear. He's always talking to them. It's brainwash, 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 like constantly. Wow. Food supply was short. People were definitely suffering. It was hot. People were miserable. He enforced more control. He wouldn't let them speak to their families or sometimes not even look each other in the eye. So, but it starts to get weird. The control was so crazy. People were convinced that they were safer in Jonestown, though, than anywhere else. He had told them all the things going on in the outside world and that they had to be careful and protect themselves.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear now. Yeah, a lot of fear.
Anyone who disobeyed or threatened to leave would be removed from the rest of the group, injected with some sort of a drug, sedated, or severely beaten. So it was not, you didn't feel safe to be like, I want out of here. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, that was not an okay thing to express.
Right.
To Jim Jones, he has had so much control over everyone. And it was kind of easier because his followers were so exhausted. If you think about how you
tired
feel
and hungry and hot and miserable.
Yeah. And if you think about how susceptible you are to really anything at that point, and think about a child, like when they haven't had a nap and like they're kind of delirious anyway. So his followers were kind of in that sort of a state. He controlled their entire reality of their world and what they thought the world was. So he is full power, full control. Intervention. Operation Stop Jimmy. We're trying to chill this guy out. So towards the end of the cult, People's Temple, sorry. Interchangeably. Jin knew that things were starting to cave in. It was starting to become, things were getting out of hand and he knew it. People started looking more closely from the outside at what was going on. People started to investigate it because followers had left and began to tell their story. And everybody was horrified and almost in disbelief that something like this could even be happening. So a really big person in this story, not a character, he was a real person, but big player in this entire thing and the downfall of Jonestown was Congressman Leo Ryan, who paid special attention to Jonestown. And he wanted to see it for himself. So he planned to visit. He wanted to see what was going on. And he was known for being this type of person, like a real man of the people that will kind of go where no one else was going and like look into things that nobody else was like willing to look into. So, this is kind of what he's known for. And Jim Jones couldn't handle someone coming in and taking his empire, so he kind of came up with a plan. He knew that Congressman Ryan was going to be coming, so he started grooming his followers on what to say. He coached them, and I've heard audio recordings of this, of exactly how they should respond to every single thing that they would be asked. And they were all like, yes, this is what we need to do, because he's like, they're going to take our paradise away if they think something's wrong. So here's what if you're asked about this thing, here's what you say. So he had coached them. he also started grooming his followers to accept the idea of revolutionary suicide. And he had done this a lot with the inner circle, like I said, where he would pretend they were poisoned and they actually weren't. So this was not a new thing. This is something he'd been prepping and working on for years. He knew how he wanted to end it all. He knew eventually, like, he had an escape plan, like an end game, and it was always this big revolutionary suicide. So he had to kind of prep everybody so that they wouldn't protest, that they would go willingly. And most of them did, which is so interesting. But he got this all ready. He planned it all out in advance. He had already purchased the cyanide. So he was that prepared. Meanwhile, Congressman Leo Ryan gets a group of people, including members of various media outlets, to go with him. And they all go to Guyana to check it out. So the crazy thing is, he didn't think that they were going to be let in. He thought they would show up at the gate, ask to be let in, have the media cameras, be turned away, and go home. Yeah. He had no idea that they were going to invite him in, and they did. So that was like surprise number one. So they go in. They're doing their thing. They're interviewing people. They're asking them, are you happy? How they felt. And of course, they appeared happy, almost overly happy, like it was so rehearsed. And the audio of this is crazy too.
Yeah, I kind of want to look that up.
Yeah, you should. It's very, very interesting. So, they put on a big musical, like, presentation for him. They put on a big show for him. Like, it's a whole ordeal.
Wow.
And so Congressman Ryan is convinced that everything's good, but of course it had all been very rehearsed. So, as he's getting ready to leave, this is wild. Members quietly began slipping notes to the visitors that said things like, "Help me," and "I want to leave." I know I got chills.
I did too.
They confronted. So Congressman Ryan and his group confronted Jim about this, and he was extremely defensive. He was trying to do some damage control, but you could tell he was angry. At this point, things were really falling apart. Things got very emotional. An uproar took place, and at this point, people began vocalizing that they wanted to leave with the congressman and the guests. Wow. It got crazy. It got out of hand. So they thought something was going to happen. Like, they didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. And Jim Jones was like, "Fine, you guys get out of here." So they start heading off to, their plane. It's on the edge of the island. They all make their way over there. The followers who were leaving were scared. And they were like, "We need to get out of here." And he was like, "No, it's fine. Like, we're about to leave. Everything's going to be okay." And they were like, You don't know.
You should be scared, man.
So this is what started the massacre. Trigger warning. This is a lot. So they're waiting on their planes. Tensions were very high. Jim Jones got his armed guards to go after them and told them, "Don't let anybody leave." So they think they're leaving. They think they've escaped. Really, the followers knew better. But the congressman and the media, like those...
You're going to try something.
They didn't feel like they were in any danger. They were like, "No, we're getting to leave. Like, they're not going to do anything. Let people know we're here." I think that was a part of it too. It's like, no, people know we're here.
It would be obvious if they killed us or something.
They can't do anything. Like, we're got to get out of here. So, this is so terrible. They're starting to board the plane, and they see the guards approaching them. These men open fire with assault rifles and begin killing them off one by one. So it's mass chaos. Everybody's scattering into the rainforest trying to find safety. Congressman Ryan was shot and killed, along with the cameraman and several others. And so they're filming. They're filming during this. It's really crazy. Yes. One survivor said he played dead after he was shot. It was absolutely gruesome. 5 people died in that attack, including Congressman Ryan. Wow. The guards left once they thought everyone was dead. Now, Jim commands the mixing of the fatal cyanide punch for over 900 of his followers to then drink. And he also said, he wasn't going to be taken alive. As far as Jim was concerned, they were all going down together. And with armed guards surrounding the pavilion, the citizens of Jonestown had the option to either drink the poison or be shot to death. Here's your two choices
too, right?
Yes, we'll get into that as well.
Okay.
So a few of the members tried to oppose it. It's all captured on the audio recording, which is like really hard to hear. The people who tried to speak up were immediately shut down. Jim kept saying, direct quote, "Let's all just be done with it." Parents were then, oh, this is so sad. Trigger warning again. Parents were instructed to force their children to drink the poison. Jim is telling them as it's happening, like, there's no pain, there's no convulsions, it's going to be easy. They're not crying because of pain. They're like telling them all this when it's cyanide. There's absolutely convulsing and foaming at the mouth. It's hideous. It's horrible. It's a slow death. Like, I believe it's the time to die is about 7 minutes.
Oh God.
It's awful. Like, to watch your child, like, I can't. So, like I said, 270 children died that day. They were the first to go. It's so awful. It's hideous. And also, quoting over the audio, this is so awful. Jim is saying to his wife, Marceline, who was really upset at this. Like, I think she was trying to stop this. Mm-hmm. Jim says, "Mother, mother, 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 please don't scare the children. It's medication. It's simple. Lay down your life with dignity, not fear. Don't do it this way." So that's his message. These children are literally frothing at the mouth and dying a horrible death. And Jim was then saying, direct quote, "This is revolutionary suicide. We're protesting." And as people started to like panic when they realized this was really happening, he was started to rush them along. "Come on, quickly, 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 quickly." Yeah, he kept saying the word quickly over and over. The recording is like so intense. And I mentioned this at the beginning. Jim Jones himself did not die by cyanide. He actually died of what was believed to maybe be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. But there's discrepancy here because also he was found laying face up, eyes open, no glasses, on the table in the pavilion with a pillow under his head and a single gunshot wound. So there is a trusted member of the inner circle, I believe her name was Anne, who is believed to be the person who shot Jim Jones and then put his head under the pillow. Because he couldn't do it himself. Because she had to make sure everything else had gone according. Like, she was so trusted that she was trusted with the final details after him. But yeah, I don't feel like he did it himself.
No.
All the deaths took place on November 18th, 1978. A few more details about the deaths. His last words: "We set an example for others. We laid it down. Our revolutionary suicide is us protesting an inhumane world." 918 people in total died that day. 913 by some sources. Again, there's a little discrepancy there. There were only 7 survivors of Jonestown. And the total time for the deaths from start to finish, 4 hours. Wow. If you think about the time it took for this to happen, where, you were either
distributing all of the... Yeah.
Yes, and those, again, who didn't want to voluntarily take it were either shot or injected. There were several bodies found with syringes hanging out of them. So that was absolutely confirmed that was one of the ways that the deaths were committed. The leadership team was the last to die. So the last 13 people to die were all leadership. So they made sure everybody else was dead first. They all went into Jim Jones's personal cabin. And that is where they were.
And the security guards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those trusted people. So the aftermath. We'll do the aftermath, and then we're just going to spend the rest of the time talking about chart stuff. And anything else that pops up that I may talk about and answer that I didn't include in my notes because there's so much in my mind from this story. So the images of the aftermath of Jonestown were so incredibly disturbing. Mothers were dead holding their infants. Families died holding hands. Bodies were literally everywhere, stacked on top of each other. It was, again, more of a mass murder than a mass suicide, with the number of people that did not go willingly. At least 300 were children and did not do this, on their own accord. But you think about the number of adults.
Who would have rather not.
Who tried to oppose it as well, and they did not have a choice. The public was so disturbed by this. They were given a phone number to call and claim their dead family members to get their bodies shipped back because nobody knew what to do with all these bodies. There's nearly 1,000 bodies.
Yeah.
And I know before we even decided we wanted to cover this story, I sent you images of the overhead, the aerial view of Jonestown, of what this looked like and how awful and sad this scene was. I mean, it's more than the casualty of war.
When I found that survivor story, it mentioned how how Guyana couldn't handle the cleanup,
right?
And they had to call on the U.S. to come help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, no cemeteries wanted to accept these bodies in the United States either. So this is part of like where the hotline was built, and people could claim bodies, and they'd be shipped back to the families to figure it out. It's just there's hundreds of unidentified bodies with nowhere to put them. It's just so sad. Family members of the deceased that had escaped the cult years earlier were just devastated and grief-stricken. It's hard to imagine the pain of the survivors. So, like, our hearts really go out to those who survived and the family members of the victims that have survived. Like, it's hideous. It makes me want to cry because people entered this group with hope, with compassion, and this vision for a united world and like this integrated community that like didn't exist where they were. It's just one of the most terrible tragedies in human history. And after 1978, the People's Temple ceased to exist, and we can at least all be grateful for that. Let's please look at the charts before I start crying. I'm really holding it together.
Okay, we can do that.
I'm exhausted from holding in the tears.
All right. So, I pulled some more charts.
Yes.
Oh, that is the wrong window. Hey. The massacre was November 18th, 1978. And I pulled that up. So we have the transit. What's interesting, I think, on this is it was Scorpio season.
Oh my god.
It was right before
I didn't
my
think
birthday.
about the date. I didn't think about it being November.
The sun is opposite his sun on the chart. Yeah.
Just like the eclipses we're in the middle of.
Yeah, it was like a semi-personal eclipse, you know? Yeah, it was this opposition for his sun. Let's see, what else was going on? Around the timing for that location, what was on the horizon would have been in like, let's see, it moves into Gemini at like 4-ish, maybe a little before that, like 3:45. So I guess kind of like when they were doing their interviews.
Yeah.
Is that like Gemini? Probably, I'm assuming.
And people started speaking up. People started
people were talking,
voicing that they didn't want to be there around the time. And
then 5:30 hits, the ascendant's still in Gemini.
Wow, so this is right
Yeah,
after
so this is all, the shooting was 5:18 to 5:25 is what I saw. So yeah, that's while it was having the shooting. I'm gonna go to that exact time. And oh my gosh. Okay.
Right on the money.
Yep, right on it. This is kind of wild to look at, isn't it? This is what the whole sky was doing right when this happened. The moon was in the first house in Cancer. It would have been, let's see, a waning quarter moon, almost a quarter moon. There are some squares to the nodes from the ascendant, from like the horizon point. That puts the nodes also in the 10th and 4th houses.
Okay.
So when you've got the nodes in the 10th house, it's a lot about a public thing, right? So I think that's really interesting that this whole was it debacle?
That's a great word for what this is. That's a good
started. I channeled that word. That's not a word I use. Kind of came up while it was on this place public appearance.
And they were putting on a show.
Yeah, it's all tied in with like how this show was going, how the public was going to perceive them now, and how it was going to affect their home, which is the fourth house element of this. That like back and forth, like, oh, this is, you know, especially for Jimmy Bob, Jimbaroo. He would have. I see why he was nervous. The nodes were also hitting his Lilith. And Pholus was there on the nodes, so this is all another like extreme event for him, and it is triggering like a pretty like key point in his chart, in my opinion. Let's see. As we move forward, I'm kind of thinking that it probably took them at least like 20-30 minutes to get back and like really get this thing going. So 6 p.m. is when it all moves, when the ascendant moves into Cancer.
And we've got this 4-hour window for the deaths to actually be occurring. So
so it's all while the ascendant, the horizon, is in Cancer and Leo. Wow. And this is all kind of where Jimbaroo had his Jupiter and Pluto, which is about death, and his Mars. So this is all him like really fulfilling out this like grand opportunity of his, very related to death. It's it's in his 8th house. It's got Pluto. It's got this like this obsession that he's been
practicing this since he was a child at the funeral home, like crawling into coffins. Yeah. It's, even with the pillow under his head.
Oh yeah,
like it's
that's exactly what it made me think.
It's so extra, like
yeah, it's very flamboyant a little bit, isn't it? The way he does it. There is a square from his Mars to his Chiron Sun situation. I think that is where some of this like maliciousness like comes through a little bit too. Yeah. So that's getting triggered at this point. Something I think is kind of fascinating is on the transit for this day, we have a conjunction with Mercury and Mars and Neptune and Sagittarius. It seems like a lot of this kind of like exertion in a delusion or in a fantasy or in like an illusion, something being grander than it really is. But going on the journey of it,
it's like going all the way, like, and he even said that, like, we're going there, we're going all the way, like, we're leaving the world together, we're leaving this inhumane world, like, he made it this big, like, final destination thing for them all.
He really did, and final destination feels right, feels like a good word for this.
Yeah. We're taking it all the way.
It's kind of like a spiritual element with that Neptune. Like a belief system. You've gotten this like bigger thing and you're taking action on it and you're talking about it and thinking about it. Like it does kind of like make sense for this group.
This is really strange. This is another added detail. Like with the belief system and the shared belief system is his followers all the way to the end while everyone around them is dying. They were all taking turns getting on the microphone and thanking Jim Jones for everything he did for them and gave them and like for the life that they had. So they're still expressing this grand gratitude and admiration through this, which maybe that's some of the Cancer energy.
Definitely.
Where they're getting in that like.
That's where my brain went, was that
mode of gratitude.
That Jupiter Cancer getting triggered.
Yeah.
And the moon was there right on top of his Jupiter and Pluto that day. And his feelings about that element to that obsession and that like opportunity, like it's very. And
in the audio, you can literally hear crying in the background. You can hear suffering in the background, and people are just like, "Amen."
But he's not gonna care. He's in full Mars mode, especially because on this day, guess what's right on top of his Mars on this day?
Oh God, what?
You want to guess? Lilith. And Jupiter, magnifying the whole situation. Lilith there. It's...
Man, I was gonna guess Palace.
No, that'd be so... No, not Palace. Maybe Pholus.
Pholus, that's one. I always get them mixed up. Pholus is the one.
I was like, you weren't thinking of Pallas.
No,
you were
Pholus
thinking of
is
Pholus.
the decision one.
Yeah, I
And
know.
Pholus is the one.
I know which ones you trip up. I gotta remember.
Those are the two that always trip me up with asteroids. Like, because they sound so similar. No.
You trip those up, and then JC trips up this other thing, and I gotta remember what you
That's
guys
really
both
funny.
trip
Shout
up.
out JC.
I'm like, I know what you're saying, but like,
Yep,
this.
nope, you're right. It's
funny.
You would have known what I was thinking. What I was meaning.
I know what you meant.
There's a reason I'm not the astrologer.
I'm good at knowing what people meant.
Yeah.
I've noticed that I'm really good at that.
I'm the crime person on this podcast. I'm just an astrology enthusiast.
Like, I feel like when people misspeak around me, other people correct them, and I'm like, no, but I knew what you meant. Like, you're good.
Yep,
Yeah.
you understood.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, anyways. Yeah, Jupiter and Lilith on his Mars this day. So he's probably been, Jupiter especially moves kind of slow, so I feel like he was really, this was building up for him.
Right, he bought the cyanide well in advance, and like, I think that was his backup plan. Like, if anything goes wrong, I've got this plan, and it might have been something that he went ahead and did anyway after Congressman Ryan left, like before anything could go any further, like his form of controlling it. That might have been his plan.
If it wasn't going to go his way, then we might as well just end game.
We're gonna end it all with this revolutionary season.
Trust me, you guys don't want to keep playing. We're just gonna be done now. Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Which is honestly so Capricorn and Taurus.
I just had a memory spark up. So the woman who, again, I believe her name was Anne, the one who potentially most likely shot Jim Jones, who was the last to die. She wrote a suicide note. Like, she wrote a note, and the final line of it, let me make sure I get it correct, was, "We had to die because they wouldn't let us live." Like, we, the world at large. Like, this
protest was obviously extremely successful. The world has changed, all for the better now.
Right.
Just pisses me off.
People truly believed that, like soldiers were going to come and take their children and murder their children if they didn't do this. Like, they thought the consequence of staying alive was so much worse than
they had been brainwashed.
This big revolutionary act.
And to think that the people that did it willingly were so deceived that they thought they were doing it for a good reason is so sad. Like, it's also sad for the people that didn't want to die and got injected or killed anyway. But also the people that wanted to do it, like, they were so brainwashed.
It's both ends of the spectrum when it comes to how sad it was and how deeply they believed.
They didn't even die for their cause that they wanted. They died for this man's delusion. Yeah.
It's so sad.
It's very sad.
It's tragic all around.
Yep. Yeah, I think he had an obsession for a long time, and he kind of, like, propped him up with his issues, and he wanted to play the game of life and go about his goals, and this was just, like, the right day for it. It seemed like it was the right opportunity, and I think that's kind of how he saw it, too. It had been building,
and it's, like, the very end of Scorpio season, too. Like, it's, like, almost...
It's on the cusp.
Yeah.
Vesta was back in Capricorn, and he's having a Vesta return.
God.
So the devotion was really there.
Devoted to the cause.
Devoted to what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Devoted to being king of his little world. Yeah. It feels like real life Sims, like something people would do on a video game. You know what I mean?
I don't play video games, and I've never played The Sims, but I know it's one with all the people, right?
Yes, the people one.
I don't really understand what you do there. But I'm going to take your word for it. And I feel like this reference is going to resonate with people. I was just very sheltered and never owned or played any video games.
I think that'd be fun if we made you play Sims.
I think I'd be confused and I think you would be entertained by my response to what was happening.
I would be very entertained, and I want to see it.
I feel like maybe we should do this for a Patreon episode.
That makes sense.
My introduction to video games at 35 years old.
Yeah, can we please make you play Sims?
Okay, I will consent.
Haven can help. She's good at Sims.
How would you be good at? We can talk about this later.
Well, because I haven't played, honestly, I have not played Sims since, like, Sims 2, and it's, like, Sims 4 or 5 or something.
Okay, well,
now.
I'm turning
so, like, she knows the updates.
Basically, I'm just going to reenact JONESTOWN with my Sims character.
Maybe Sims 3. Maybe I played Sims 3. It's been a long time, but there's been better versions of the game, and it's more complicated now, so you...
Oh, no, well, I probably need a dumbed-down version. It'll be okay.
I can't get you Sims 2. I don't think I can.
Okay, well, I'll figure it out.
It'll be fine.
You guys will coach me. Okay.
It'll be good.
Wow, we went off on a thing.
You'll start your little Sims cult. That'd be great.
I'm into this.
Let's see. Yeah, so I think what people are gonna remember from this day, the massacre day, is just the sheer abruptness and violence of it. Because the midheaven, also the delusion and like the that culty group, like,
it's so grandiose.
Spiritual issue, like, yeah, because the midheaven, like, she goes from Pisces into Aries during this time. So I feel like that's really just how it became remembered too.
The word that
it's like Pisces, Aries.
The word I keep getting is legendary. Like,
Legendary.
that's really what this.
Yeah.
In the worst possible way. In the worst possible way, this was like.
It's got kind of that fire, but that word has the fire of Aries, but also the like etherealness of Pisces.
That's the word that I got like 6 times, and I was like, I have to say this word.
Yeah,
I didn't want to
legendary.
say it because it felt like it was glorifying.
But I know what you're meaning.
That's not what I'm trying to do. I feel like that's what they felt they were doing.
Yeah, I think people also saw it as like a step back in society, like in like what we want for our world, because the South Node is here, and it's kind of like, whoa, what?
Like, we've regressed as a race of people, like as humans, we have regressed somehow. It's also just the devastation and just the disbelief that this could happen. And if you didn't know the whole story about how long people have been groomed for this, it does seem pretty unbelievable that many people could die today. Like, how could they do that? But like, we went through how this all happened and how it culminated. It's really,
it's also his Chiron return at this day. Wow. Chiron had also come all the way back around.
Whoa, interesting. Because he had to just like,
that's his sun conjunction.
Yeah,
that's his.
I remember saying that. So he had to end his wounded healing journey. He's
this is
done.
part of his Chiron journey. You guys, thank you so much for being part of it.
Oh God,
so gross.
He is so gross.
He healed them all. His job is done.
Oh, I hate it.
He Chiron'd all of them real good. Now game over.
When you look at the psychology of him, it's hard to tell how much he believed in this himself and was invested in his own delusion, and how much he was just a sociopath who was extremely calculated and using, faking this compassion as a form of control and manipulation. Like, it's really hard. It's a really blurry line to know what he did out of like delusions, the goodness of his heart, to how much, the calculated manipulative factor. Like, it's all kind of one and the same. You can't tell where one ends and another begins. So it's hard to kind of break down his true psychology.
Right.
Because you could argue both, which is kind of fun. That's kind of the fun part of psychology, is that you can really see both sides of the coin with him. And like, or maybe him starting out, like we see him starting out as this compassionate person, but it's like, was that all fake just to build the empire? You can't really tell. You can't tell. And he's such a chameleon when it comes to that. Like, the lines are so blurry, and we don't see that a lot in this podcast. Usually it's very clear.
It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
They're getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And he did get worse, but it's like, you at parts of the time, I think a lot of people were rooting for him, so it's very different. But there's one person who was there and saw all of it from start to finish, who I have. She was one of the survivors.
Yes.
Her name's Hyacinth Thrash.
That's a cool name. Swish the paper.
Frank had a little spider web in his ribs, and I left it.
I'm so
happy. Look, there's the spider. Isn't it so cute?
Oh my God. We can't stop what we're doing to get a video of this, but I want to. Okay.
Isn't it so cute?
It's so
I
cute.
left it there.
There's another one.
Oh yes, you might have a friend. I didn't check.
Oh my God, there's multiple spiders. I'm so excited. Okay. Frank, you're missing. Okay.
He's the mother of these spiders.
He's the unsung hero of this podcast.
He's the mother of spiders.
He's the father.
He's daddy. They were born in his rib cage.
He's their father.
Okay, alright.
Okay, we got distracted.
Okay, so Hyacinth She was one of the early converts who followed Jones.
I do like that.
She followed Jimmy Jones, and let's see, she survived Jonestown on November 18th by hiding under her bed. So once she heard that something went weird at the airport, she heard something. And so she hid then before they even got anything going. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Because I was thinking, like, what would I have done?
She stayed there for like 5 hours, though.
Oh, longer than that. She didn't come out till the next day. So she survived Jonestown on November 18th by hiding under her bed. Her and her sister joined the People's Temple in Indianapolis in 1957. So she was there a long time.
Wow.
But in the months leading up to November 18th, she saw troubling changes in Jones and the church. She had begun in Indiana as an enlightened, racially integrated Christian ministry in the 1950s, and it had turned into an armed camp of fear, brutality, and paranoia deep in the South American jungle.
Yeah.
She was living in a cottage she shared in Jonestown with 3 other older women. One of her roommates told her that something had happened at Port Katuma, if that's how you say it, airport, where the congressmen from California were taking off with some temple defectors. She hid under the bed and didn't wake up until the next morning. When I got outside, she said in an interview before she died, it was like a ghost town. I didn't see or hear anybody. I went over to another senior citizen building where my friend Birdie lived. When I got to the door, I saw Birdie sitting in the chair draped in a sheet. I could tell it was Birdie by her shoes. I say, Birdie, what's wrong? But she didn't move. I looked down at the row of beds, and it goes into her,
talking about all the bodies, and she's realizing and putting it together.
So that's just a little snippet from this site where I was reading her info. But I thought that was like the main gist of this, is that she started really following this as
she was an OG
thing. Yeah.
She was an OG follower who followed him from Indiana to California to Guyana and managed to survive Jonestown Massacre. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it sounds like there were some other survivors, but this is the person I found the most information on. Yeah. So her chart, she was born on March 25th, 1902 in Wilsonville, Alabama. And I don't have a time. But we got a whole date. So that was good. It's from 1902. Yeah.
Like, this is early.
Yeah.
This is very early.
So she's an Aries. Which I kind of think is part of why she did well. Like, she's got Aries and Mars conjunct with Pallas in. Did I say Aries and Mars?
Did you mean her son?
Yes.
I knew what you meant there, but I was like,
I'm sick. I'm not feeling good. Her sun and Mars are together with Pallas in Aries, and on her noon chart, her midheaven is there. But we don't really know her midheaven. There's a grand trine from her sun over to Pholus and Lilith. And Pholus hits right where Jim's Mars hits on his chart. And then the Lilith up in Sag is reminding me so much of the... it's in his 11th house, but on the transit chart, it's reminding me of all that stuff that was over in Sagittarius. I feel like she just has really good placements to have, like, played this out just right.
Yeah. Luck was on her side, for sure.
Yeah. She was able to kind of, like, figure things out by, like, the, what's that phrase? The something of your pants?
The seat of your pants. Flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
I'm good at old-timey phrases.
That's what I need.
So, yeah, I'm here.
That's what I need, because I don't remember them enough to use them, but they come up when they feel right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like that's kind of what she did, and it worked out really well. I can see why she's so, wanting to be helpful and caring, wanting to be part of something that is really great for everybody. She's got Jupiter in Aquarius, Venus in Aquarius. Her Mercury's in Pisces. I'm sure she had a really nice little, like, flow.
I love similar placements.
Yeah, you do.
That's really cool. But also, my birthday is close to hers, but
Yeah, but she
Yeah.
was born a little after
a
you.
little bit after.
Yeah, you might have gotten along. I mean, similar. Her Chiron is in Capricorn, which is conjunct Vesta in Capricorn. It's also her Vesta return.
Wow.
So I think she was seeing like this epitome of a cycle for herself as well.
Mhm.
It was also part of her Chiron journey. And her Vesta journey. She also has Saturn in Capricorn. So I see kind of like why she related to him at first, and then when it got bad, she was like, "Whoa, dude."
She was able to actually see
Yeah.
it, though. She was able to step
She was one
out
of the people that were definitely like, okay, but knew she had to play it just right.
Yeah.
Where
There's
she
a lot of
didn't do anything.
strategy
Yeah.
involved here.
But it's almost felt like an intuitive strategy.
Yes.
Not that she's
not a
she couldn't be.
calculated
It
strategy.
doesn't feel
but
calculated, yeah, based on her chart.
She
and,
followed her gut instincts and was like, I gotta hide out
But
here.
she does have a little sneaky. She's got North Node and Scorpio. But at the time, I wanted to look at like her chart compared to the transit of it, because like, man, at 5 something or other, it would have been hitting her.
Like about the time that she hid.
Yeah, that's what I want to figure out. Is
Yeah.
when she hid, what it was hitting. And
The moment she heard shit was going down, she like went into this
survival
survival mode that was like,
genius.
yeah, genius.
It
And
was the
also
only
so
way,
simple.
because if you left, like some people fled into the woods, but also like, what are you gonna?
Where are you gonna go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see.
That's cool that she's one of only 7 people who survived this and didn't even know what had happened. She just knew that she wasn't going to be part of whatever was going down. Something big was going down that she needed to escape somehow and protect herself. So it was really
For real.
so lucky. Amazing.
So this would have been hitting her Neptune. The ascendant would have been coming up on her Neptune during the shooting, and probably like while she heard about it. So I see that kind of like play into like her belief system and like what she needs to do. Since we talked about Lilith and Jupiter being in Leo, where Jonesy Brew, Jonesy Boys, Jonesy Brew.
Jonesy Brew.
I'm just saying stuff.
I know, you're
Jonesy
I
Brew.
like it.
Jonesy Brew has his Mars there in Leo, but she has her Pholus there, so it's making this nice trine up to her Sun and Mars. So I see kind of like her taking action to survive, being really fast, really a great opportunity for her. It was also Jupiter oppositions for her, so this Jupiter activation, this luck that you were talking about. Let's see, some Neptune stuff, right? What are we talking about? Yeah, a Neptune opposition as well. So I kind of like these oppositions coming up, because sometimes when we see like these critical deaths, sometimes they're like more like returns. So maybe the oppositions could signify not yet. But let's see, Chiron was on her South Node, so she was definitely in a place where she was probably already feeling kind of stuck. Yeah, because when your Chiron's on your South Node, you're feeling like, oh, all this traumatic stuff is holding me back, like one way or another. But her heart was focused on what she needed to do, because her North Node had Venus transiting it in Scorpio. That's pretty intense. Venus in Scorpio is pretty intense. You're doing what you need to do. You care about what's really important when Venus goes through Scorpio.
Which it is right now.
Yeah. It's a very deep type of like feelings placement. So I think also for her to recognize that maybe she's not loyal to him during this time.
Yeah.
It was pretty intense. And it was retrograde. Do you remember the last time we had Venus retrograde in Scorpio?
Oh, God.
You remember how that felt? Yeah.
I don't like
They were all going through that feeling.
I don't like any time that Venus is in retrograde. I always feel it really strongly, but yeah.
Yeah, they were going through that. All of them for Jonestown.
Wow.
But a lot of them ended up still dying.
Most of them.
Yeah. Oh, Uranus was in Scorpio. Man. That's a lot going on these charts. hers is really fascinating. I see kind of how she got lucky and how she resonated with Jem's chart and how she was, her placements lined up for her to make this her opportunity to make it through.
She survived it.
And be kind of clever about it.
Yeah, she survived it, and thank goodness, because like what a story to be able to tell, and awful.
It was really awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine like waking up the next day
and going to check on your best friend?
Everyone in your neighborhood's dead.
Oh my God.
Everyone in your town is dead.
But you knew something was going down, and you were like, I think I'm going to hide and sleep through this, because this seems like not something I want to be a part of. Whatever's going down, I'm just going to like...
Yeah.
Just going to like escape it, but in a way that's like, I'm going to hide and escape, and then just like waking up to it. Yeah, that's intense. Is there anything else that you want to talk about on the charts? Are we...
Yeah, I just really like this hidden in plain sight thing with the Neptune. With the Neptune.
And she was.
Thing coming up.
Very much hidden in plain sight while all this was going down. It's crazy.
Like I'm isolated, but I'm like not.
I'm in the middle of it also.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Well,
that's all I got.
With that said, everybody, that is Jen Jones and the Jonestown Massacre, and even a survivor chart, which was a fun little surprise there at the end.
A little
extra. So thank you guys so much, as always, for everything you do for our podcast. One of the best things that you can do for us, it would really help us a lot, is if you rate and review our podcast. It doesn't really matter what you say, but the ratings are really important. That's how a podcast moves up the charts. That's how you get found. That's how you get seen by more people. So from a business standpoint, it is the most helpful thing you can do for any podcast that you
share with people you think that would like it.
Make sure you share. Make sure you, like us, subscribe to all the things that we're doing. Follow us on social media. Stay connected with us. Join our Patreon if you want some extra perks and want some behind the scenes footage. We do a lot of fun stuff on Patreon. It's one of my favorite things. And also Patreon gets special discounts on any cool things we do, like the workshop, like readings from each of us. We offer Patreon like a perk there. We have all sorts of specialties. Anything that we do that's like cool and fun, we roll it out to Patreon first. But thank you all for everything. If you want any merch, if you want anything else, any other information about what we've got going on, just go to darkalignmentpodcast.com. It's very simple. Super simple.
Just do it.
Wait, what?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Well, as always, thank you guys. Please continue to love yourselves, and always, first and foremost, be sure to chart all the bitches in your life, and we'll see you later. Bye.